It happened live. Millions were watching. Keir Starmer's face turned red. Kemi Badenoch didn't raise her voice, she didn't have to. In less than 2 minutes, she said something that shocked the entire panel. You could see it in the Labour MP's eyes: panic, disbelief, silence. But what exactly did she say? And why is everyone calling this her boldest moment yet? The confrontation took place on a popular Sunday morning political program, where politicians from different parties gathered to debate key national issues. The topic was already tense: immigration policy and Labour's recent comments about expanding migrant housing in local council areas. Kemi Badenoch, the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, was seated opposite Keir Starmer and 2 Labour MPs. The mood was serious, but controlled, until she leaned forward slightly and said, "Let's stop pretending the British public don't know what you're doing." At first, no one reacted. Starmer looked confused. Then Badenoch continued. She accused Labour of secretly negotiating deals with large property developers to convert family housing into migrant shelters, without public input, and without informing local councils. The camera zoomed in as murmurs filled the room. One Labour MP tried to interject, but Badenoch raised her hand slightly and said, "Let me finish." That's when everything shifted. She pulled out a small folder and calmly read out the names of 3 councils where, according to her, Labour insiders had already agreed to pilot this plan. Her claim? That Labour was preparing to quietly expand housing zones across several boroughs that are already under pressure, all while telling the public they were still reviewing options. The host, trying to stay neutral, asked if she had evidence. Badenoch nodded. "It's in your inbox," she said, looking directly at him. "I sent it 30 minutes before we went live." The room froze. Starmer quickly tried to regain the conversation. He called her claims a wild and completely baseless, but his tone had clearly changed. It was no longer confident, it was defensive. He began listing Labour's public housing goals, saying they were focused on fairness and rebuilding the economy. But by then, the moment had already landed. People online began posting clips within minutes. Badenoch just buried Labour live. One tweet read. Another said, "She came with receipts." Starmer didn't see it coming. What made this moment even more shocking was how unshaken Badenoch remained. She didn't shout, didn't mock, didn't even smile. She acted like a prosecutor laying down cold facts. Her delivery made the message even more powerful. And the timing, just weeks before a key by-election, couldn't have been more damaging for Labour. By the time the segment ended, hashtags like #BadenochBombshell and #StarmerMeltdown were already trending. But this was just the beginning. The real chaos started when the cameras stopped rolling. From calm to chaos. What Kemi Badenoch actually said. The tension in the studio wasn't just about the argument, it was about the facts Kemi Badenoch came armed with. When she accused Labour of hiding local housing deals, it wasn't just a talking point. It was a direct hit. Viewers expected the usual back and forth, but instead, they saw something different: a Conservative minister reading out names, locations, and email timestamps live on national television. She began by naming 3 councils: Barking and Dagenham, Lewisham, and Waltham Forest. According to Badenoch, internal Labour discussions with developers had been going on quietly for months. These deals, she said, included plans to fast-track zoning approvals for multi-unit conversions, supposedly to meet housing demands, but in reality, they were being prepared for mass migrant intake under new guidelines that hadn't even been made public yet. She then dropped the phrase that instantly became a headline: "You're not planning with the people, you're planning around them." That one line cut deep. In just a few seconds, she shifted the conversation from a debate about policy to a moral accusation. She painted Labour as a party that treats local residents as obstacles, not citizens. The Labour MPs present looked stunned, caught between disbelief and silence. Starmer fumbled to respond, calling it a twisted version of events, but the damage was done. The audience saw him react, not with answers, but with anger. Then came the moment that truly shook the room. Badenoch claimed that an internal Labour strategy memo had circulated among MPs, warning them to delay public announcements until after council elections to avoid backlash. When asked if she had proof, she didn't hesitate. She promised to release it to the press by evening. That boldness put Starmer in an impossible position. He either had to call her a liar or admit something was happening behind the scenes. Instead, he dodged, saying, "We'll review whatever she's talking about," which only made it worse. Why now? People online were dissecting every second of the clip. Body language experts pointed out Starmer's shifting posture, his flushed cheeks, and clenched jaw. Viewers could see it too. For once, the Labour leader wasn't leading the conversation, he was reacting to it. And Badenoch wasn't just throwing claims in the air. She had coordinated a media moment with surgical precision. Social media exploded with posts praising Badenoch's confidence. Even some politically neutral viewers admitted she came prepared, and Labour didn't. TikTok clips of her takedown were racking up views by the second. In WhatsApp groups, messages were flying with captions like, "She ended him," and "Starmer couldn't breathe." Meanwhile, Labour's official comms team rushed to issue a soft statement, calling the claims unfounded conspiracy theories. But even that response looked weak compared to the raw, live moment that had just aired. They didn't deny the deals outright, they only said Badenoch misunderstood them. But viewers had already made up their minds. More damaging than any single accusation was how unshakable she looked throughout. No stuttering, no hesitation, just facts, direct eye contact, and steady delivery. It wasn't just a political attack. It felt like a courtroom verdict. And once the public senses you're hiding something, even silence becomes suspicious. Kemi Badenoch had done more than land a punch. She raised serious questions about Labour's trustworthiness, transparency, and readiness to lead. And this wasn't a newspaper story that would fade in a day. This was a clip, a meme, a viral moment, one that would be replayed again and again, and while Starmer struggled to reset the narrative, things only got worse in the next few minutes, because his meltdown wasn't over. It was just beginning. Here. Starmer's downfall didn't come from shouting or name-calling. It came from something far more damaging. He lost control, live on national television. After Kemi Badenoch dropped her final evidence line and promised to send the internal Labour memo to every journalist in the room, the Labour leader snapped to his voice, once calm and calculated, turned sharp. "That's enough," he said, cutting across the conversation. But the host, trying to stay fair, didn't stop Badenoch. She simply raised her eyebrow and said, "You know it's true. You just didn't expect me to say it here." That sentence changed everything. Starmer leaned forward, trying to speak over her, his voice rising above the others. "We will not be lectured on housing policy by someone whose own department can't explain the rise in business closures," he snapped, but instead of shaking Badenoch, the attack bounced back. She didn't react emotionally. She simply replied, "At least I'm not hiding from the voters." That line struck a nerve. You could see it. Starmer turned visibly red. He fumbled with his papers, stuttered for a second, and repeated, "This is nonsense, total nonsense," while the camera stayed tight on his expression, one of frustration, disbelief, and visible discomfort. The Labour MPs beside him remained quiet, unsure whether to jump in or stay out of it. One tried to shift the topic, asking the host to focus on facts, not accusations, but the audience had already seen what they came for. It was clear, Kemi Badenoch had cornered Starmer in front of the nation, and he didn't know how to fight back. Social media picked up the exact moment. A now viral clip shows Starmer jabbing his finger at the table as he repeated the phrase, "No, no, this is just wrong," over and over, almost like he was trying to convince himself more than the viewers. Commentators called it a political breakdown. Others simply said, "He lost it." Even the show's host looked stunned by the sudden change. You could see him glance toward the production team off camera, unsure whether to go to commercial. But instead, he let it play out. And that was the moment that sealed the clip's fate. The meltdown stayed on air. No edits. No cuts. Just a live unraveling of the Labour Party's leader under pressure. Right after the segment ended, analysts flooded Twitter and talk shows One described Starmer as unprepared and exposed. Another said, if you can't stay calm under questions from a fellow MP, how will you handle world leaders? The response wasn't just from conservatives. Some center-left voices expressed concern, saying they were disappointed in Starmer's composure. A few even admitted that Badenoch held her own in a way that Labour hadn't expected. Commentators called it a PR nightmare for Labour's media team. They were hoping for a clean policy debate, but ended up watching their leader fall apart live. The headlines the next morning were brutal. Badenoch crushes Starmer on live TV. Labour leader buckles under pressure. Is Starmer ready to lead? Within hours, the party was forced to issue another statement. This time, they denied any hidden housing agenda. But instead of clearing things up, the message only added to the confusion. It gave Badenoch more power, suggesting her words had hit so hard, Labour felt the need to respond twice, and as the news cycle spun on, Starmer's team scrambled to shift focus. But the internet never forgets. Every time someone replayed that clip, the same image came up, Starmer's face tightening, his voice cracking, and a woman across from him remaining calm and focused, refusing to back down. The political damage was done. But the fallout? That was still growing. The broadcast might have ended, but the real storm had just begun. Within minutes of the live exchange, clips of Kemi Badenoch's calm takedown and Keir Starmer's angry outburst spread across every major social media platform. Hashtags like hashtag Badenoch bombshell, hashtag Starmer meltdown, and hashtag Labour exposed shot up the trending charts on Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. The fallout wasn't just fast, it was explosive. Journalists rushed to verify the documents Badenoch mentioned. And just as she promised, her team released redacted screenshots of internal Labour emails and memos to the press. One of them included a line that read, "Avoid local press involvement until council seats are secure." That was enough to light a fire under political commentators, especially those who had been questioning Labour's strategy for months. Suddenly, the accusations didn't seem wild, they seemed possible. By evening, several Labour MPs were forced to go on record, denying involvement or claiming they weren't aware of any such plans. Some distanced themselves from the housing decisions entirely, hinting they weren't included in the inner circle. Cracks were showing, and the pressure inside the party grew louder. One anonymous MP reportedly told a journalist, "This is a mess. And it's all live." Kemi Badenoch, on the other hand, was being praised as a sharp, deadly, and disciplined. Even her political rivals were forced to admit that her performance had been surgical. Right-wing commentators called it the moment that shook Labour's fake confidence. Centre-ground voters described it as the first time in months that a politician actually sounded honest. Meanwhile, Starmer's team tried desperately to shift the narrative. They released a video explaining Labour's housing vision, using softer language and stressing community-first planning. But it was too late. The public had already seen the raw clip, unfiltered and intense. No amount of spin could erase the image of a flustered Labour leader being outclassed on live TV. Polling groups quickly picked up the public mood. Overnight surveys showed a 4-point drop in confidence for Starmer among swing voters. In key red wall areas, the clip was shared in Facebook groups with angry comments like, "He's no leader," and "She said what we've all been thinking." One political analyst even warned this could cost Labour crucial marginal seats if it sticks. To make things worse, Reform UK and Conservative MPs began echoing Badenoch's message. They called for full transparency on Labour's housing plans and demanded Starmer release all internal communications related to council development strategies. Some went further, accusing Labour of playing a dangerous game. With public trust, media outlets were split. Left-leaning platforms tried to paint Badenoch's move as calculated political theatre, while others admitted that Starmer's reaction didn't help his case. The Guardian's opinion page asked, "Why did he crack under pressure?" While The Telegraph ran a bold headline, "Badenoch exposes Labour's secret playbook." And yet, through all the noise, one thing was clear, this wasn't just a bad day for Starmer. It was a public moment of weakness, witnessed by millions, that now lives permanently online. A moment that his opponents will replay again and again. A moment that planted a seed of doubt in the minds of voters who once thought he was the steady hand in British politics. As Parliament prepares for the next round of debates, all eyes are on Starmer. Can he bounce back from this disaster? Or has Kemi Badenoch just set the tone for the rest of the election season? One thing's for sure, the next time these two meet on live TV, the entire country will be watching.